Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, Build Better Partnerships Inside and Outside the Nonprofit Sector with Marketing. This webinar is brought to you by Independent Sector and Prosper Strategies, a leading marketing and communications consultancy for the nonprofit sector. I am really excited to be joined here today by our moderator, Alyssa Conrardy, President of Prosper Strategies, and two special guests, Abby Robinson from Atlas Corps and Christina Allen-Crowder from Prevent Blindness, Texas.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
My name is Christian Klansky, and I'm Director of Marketing and Digital Strategy at Independent Sector in Washington, D.C. For those of you who may not know, Independent Sector is the only national organization that brings together the charitable community, a diverse set of nonprofits, foundations, corporations, social entrepreneurs, community leaders, and more to advance the common good. So many of you have joined us for earlier webinars in this series. This is the 8th of a 13-part series Prosper Strategies has put together for us that focuses on the concepts in their nonprofit marketing manifesto, which lays out 10 commitments nonprofits must make to increase their mission impact through marketing. Back in December's webinar, we introduced the manifesto as a whole, and each month since then, we've covered another one of the commitments. So this month, we focus on commitment number 8, which is all about partnerships. Now, before we get started, just to let you know, we'll send around a recording and slides after today's session, so don't worry about taking notes. We can't wait to have this important discussion, so without further ado, I'll turn it over to our moderator, Alyssa, to help us get started and to introduce our guests.
Thank you, Christian. And as always, really excited to be here with all of you today. Abby and Christina, welcome. Thank you for joining and agreeing to be our guests on today's webinar.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Well, this should be a really valuable discussion. For those of you who have been on our webinars before, you know the drill, how we like to kick these things off. Before we dive in, would like to take just a moment to help you all orient yourselves with GoToWebinar and greet some of you on the line. So like we usually do, I'd like you to go ahead and find the questions box and type in your name, your organization name, your title, and where you're calling in from. I will let you know who is on the line here as we start to see some others come in. So we have Joanne from Toledo, Ohio with Toledo Community Foundation. Don't have her organization name. Liza Holland from Lexington, Kentucky, Pasadena Horse Association. We have Bud with the American Camp Association in New England in Lexington, Massachusetts. Brandy from Nonprofits Association, Director of Operations. James in Prince George, Virginia. Sonia, Roadrunner Food Bank in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Denise Hines from Middleton, Wisconsin Retired Educators Association. She's the assistant to the executive director. Megan with Sister Sky in Spokane, Washington. All right, more and more of you keep coming in, so it seems like many of you have found the questions box. Happy about that. You can continue to use the questions box throughout to ask questions of myself and our guests, so Christina and Abby. I'll keep an eye on the questions box throughout today's webinar, and at the end of our session, we will circle back to and answer as many of your questions as we possibly can. We often get more than we have time for. Those that we don't get to, we will try to answer in follow-up blog posts or social content. So now that you've introduced yourselves, we would like to introduce ourselves and our organizations. Many of you know me already because you've been on our previous webinars, but if you don't, a little introduction. As Christian mentioned, I'm Alyssa Conrardy, the president of Prosper Strategies. We're a Chicago-based marketing firm that works exclusively with nonprofits on their marketing and brand strategy. We also implement marketing plans for many of our nonprofit clients. And through the course of that work, we've of course seen a lot of organizations have great success with building partnerships inside and outside the nonprofit sector that are really helping them advance their missions. We've also seen some examples of partnerships that don't go so well. So I'm really excited to have this discussion with our guests today from Atlas Corps and Prevent Blindness, Texas, to learn about how they're succeeding at partnership. So with that said, I'd like to turn it over to you, Abby, to introduce yourself to our group today.
Great, thank you. So my name is Abby Robinson. I'm the Chief Development and Engagement Officer at Atlas Corps. And Atlas Corps is an overseas professional fellowship. So essentially we engage professionals from around the world between the ages of 22 to 35 in a year-long professional service opportunity in the United States at organizations that range from local organizations here in Washington, D.C., like Miriam's Kitchen that serves the homeless population, to your international NGOs like CARE or World Vision, to also corporate partners like Microsoft and American Express. And so the idea is that a tech specialist from the Palestinian territories will serve at Microsoft, or a monitoring and evaluation specialist for Pakistan will serve at CARE, and they help strengthen the organization, and then they bring that knowledge and network back home. We've had 700 plus fellows from 94 different countries in our 12 years. I've actually been with the organization 9. My background, I'm originally from the great state of Minnesota, and I've been in the nonprofit essentially all my professional career. I love it. And I really started my career, and what brought me out to Washington, D.C. was working with the Campus Kitchens Project and D.C. Central Kitchen. And then I transitioned into the international realm. So I'm excited to talk with you all today.
We are excited to talk with you as well and really learn more about how partnership is completely baked into the Atlas Corps model. Can't wait. Christina, how about you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about one of my favorite aspects of nonprofit development work, and that's marketing and partnerships. I am Christina Allen-Crowder. I am the Vice President of Development for Prevent Blindness Texas. We are a state-level nonprofit organization affiliated with Prevent Blindness America at the national level. We have been around since 1995. We serve the entire state of Texas, and our mission is to prevent blindness and preserve sight. We do that in 3 different ways: by educating medical professionals and those in the general population about the importance of eye health and vision-related impairments and what each of us can do to help prevent those. We also accomplish and execute our mission by advocating for increased funding for public health in the space of vision-related illnesses and health problems and eye diseases. And lastly, and what we are probably most known for, is our screening program that we conduct in local schools, in the community, and with various partners. And we actually can train individuals to become certified vision screeners for adults and children. We then carry out these screening events in the community, and when individuals do not pass the preliminary screening exams, if they meet the qualifications, we can provide them with a comprehensive eye exam at no cost to them. And if needed, they also can get a new pair of glasses to address their need for corrective lenses to satisfy the requirements to address their vision impairment at no cost to them as well. So we have a 3-pronged approach, and partnerships is an essential piece of how we are able to be successful as a nonprofit. Over the past 2 years, we have tripled the number of individuals that we've served in the state of Texas. And most recently, in our fiscal year, we served almost 37,000 people across the state. I have worked in the nonprofit space for the past 8 years after transitioning from a legal career. And I tell people all the time, I have the best job in the world because I get to do what I love and I get to get paid for it at the same time. So thank you for inviting me, and looking forward to the conversation today.
That's so awesome. I think there might be a few people on the line today who would fight you and say they have the best job in the world, but that's why we're all lucky to work in or with the nonprofit sector. So Christina, thanks, Abby. One of the reasons that I asked Christina and Abby to come together on this webinar is because partnerships are essential to both of their organizations' models and success and missions, but they're pursuing partnerships in some pretty different ways from one another. So I think they'll lend some really interesting perspectives, and they're both of your companies. Here's our agenda for today's webinar. As always, we'll start with an introduction from me to the commitment that we're focused on this month. It's commitment number 7. Then we'll transition to Q&A with Amy and Christina based on some questions I prepared. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be taking your questions at the end of this webinar, so don't forget to chat in during the course of the webinar. The more they're coming in as we talk, the better. And then we'll be sharing some resources as well for you to go deeper with this information and continue to pursue. I said question number, or commitment number 7, but this is actually commitment number 8. We're one ahead of where I thought we were. Commitment number 8 also says that we will use our brands and marketing to build partnerships and advance the broader causes we are focused on. And this commitment goes on to say, it's pretty brief, but it's powerful. We will realize that we are not an island and we will behave accordingly. Take a minute to let that sink in. This really means is that we know that our own organizations, as innovative as they might be, exist among a whole bunch of others that are focused on similar goals. We can and we should aim to differentiate ourselves from that set for the our own objectives, but we should never aim to be the best or the only organizations in our focus areas. Instead, we should aim to build partnerships with other organizations, acknowledging that we're stronger together than we are alone. Essentially, this commitment asks us to emphasize collaboration over competition. And when people ask me, when they hear what Prosper does, and they ask me, well, how is marketing really different in the nonprofit sector from for-profits? This is one of the first things I highlight, that we emphasize collaboration over competition. And yes, differentiation matters, but we need to think about differentiation differently, from the perspective of differentiation to strengthen brands and differentiation to partnerships rather than differentiation to be the best or the only. This commitment asks us to recognize that our brands and marketing and communications are the key assets that make our organizations more appealing to potential partners. And I really feel like we can see our brands, we can aim to strengthen them accordingly from a very different perspective. When we build effective partnerships, we're not just advancing our own organization's missions and goals. The really important thing here is that we're advancing the broader causes we're focused on, whether that's hunger or homelessness or climate change or equitable access to education, or in Christina's case, blindness and vision issues. Moving the needle on these issues really takes a village, in my opinion, and we're going to see far more impact and a far greater return on any investments we're making if our organizations can work together and partner with those both inside and outside of the social sector. So, what does it take to build an effective partnership, and how can your brand and your marketing help? A couple things I want to cover here. First, really feel it's important to understand the different types of partnerships and the role that each can play in your organization. The two primary types of partnerships are intra-sector partnerships and cross-sector partnerships. Intra-sector partnerships are those between your organization and another nonprofit. And cross-sector partnerships are those between your nonprofit and a business, a government entity, an academic entity, anyone outside of the nonprofit sector. Each type of partnership here really requires the same things to be successful, but there's also some differences. In these profits join forces. Each organization needs to have the organizational capacity necessary to manage projects and budgets and staff development. And these partnerships are community-based, decision-making, inclusive, and really deeply engage the community that the organization needs to serve itself. When it comes to cross-sector partnerships, one of the big differences here, it's true of intersector partnerships as well, but even more important in cross-sector, is that alignment is really critically important. So regardless of the goodwill of the participants, two very different organizational cultures need to come together to produce results in these sorts of partnerships. And often when you're partnering with those outside of the social sector, that can make things a little bit difficult. One key is really to find common ground and use shared language that underscores the vision of the partners. I'm going to pause there and notice just 2 or 3 chats that we're having some audio issues. Is it improved at all? Or can you all chat into the questions box? Let me know if you can hear me okay, if you're still having issues. Mixed results. Some of you are saying it's fine. Some of you are saying you're breaking up a little. Give me just a minute and I will switch my audio and be right back with you. Okay, any better? That seems to be better. Getting a bunch of yeses. I'll keep talking. Yes, they say keep going. Okay. Hopefully that took care of it. Thank you for sticking with me there. Does anyone want me to backtrack, or did you get the gist of what we were talking about on that last slide? I think I'll keep forging ahead here to keep us on the time frame that we've dedicated ourselves to sticking to, but hopefully it'll come through better in the recording than it did for some of you on the line. It sounds like it was a mixed issue that not everyone was experiencing. Gotta love technology. So moving right along here, we're looking at two types of partnerships, cross-sector and intra-sector partnerships. And across these two types, partnerships can take many different shapes and forms, but wanted to share a couple examples of the most common types of partnerships, and these will align with what you're going to hear today. So probably the most common type of partnership is collaboration. So collaboration partnerships are often informal and involve things like sharing information or coordinating efforts around something like an event. Second most common type of partnership is a strategic alliance, which usually involves shared or transferred decision-making power. So an example of that might be consolidating your administrative function within an organization that you could share and be more efficient with in that way. Third type is integration, which usually involves changes to the way your organization is structured in some shape or form. So that usually involves something like a joint venture where two or more organizations create a new structure to advance a program-related function, maybe a merger where previously separate organizations combine their program or administrative or governance functions. Just some examples there. Fourth type of partnership that's quite common, probably what most of us first think about when we think about partnerships, is a funding alliance. And that occurs when organizations come together to share a grant or donation or to create a recipient and donor relationship. It's the most common type for sure of cross-sector partnership. And then the last type of partnership structure I want to highlight today is a cost-sharing partnership. And that occurs when each organization provides different resources, such as facilities or staff or equipment. So no matter which of these types of partnerships you're engaged in, there are a few characteristics of a successful partnership that you should aim for. The ones that I want to highlight for you today include leadership, culture, value alignment, learning and development, and communication and performance management. So would like to spend just a few minutes breaking each of those down. First characteristic, leadership. So to succeed, a partnership really needs a clear leader. And we see organizations go wrong in this area all the time. Doesn't mean that the partner should aim to be authoritarian or that they shouldn't build consensus or collaborate, but someone needs to be clearly at the helm of the partnership for it to work, for it to move forward and achieve its full potential. Second characteristic of effective partnerships is purpose. So partnerships really need to be guided by a shared vision and a purpose that really builds trust and recognizes the value and contribution of each of the members of that partnership. Each partner really needs to understand and accept the importance of agreed upon goals that you discuss upfront at the beginning of the partnership. The third, and I really think the most important characteristic of a successful partnership is what I mentioned on the previous slide, that culture and value alignment. So partnership really only makes sense when two partners share similar values and motivations for wanting to work together. Partners also need to discuss their organizational cultures to identify how to work within their strengths and weaknesses and really be realistic about where they're starting the partnership from. If a partnership is going to succeed, of course, there also needs to be effective communication and value on communication at all levels within the partnership and inside the partner organizations. Partnership is just like any other relationship where communication is key. So you should look at developing strong feedback loops as well that you're kind of outlining from the beginning of the relationship so that everyone involved in the partnership is receiving timely information about what's happening with the partnership, what's working, what's not, what's happening next. Really important just to keep everyone in the loop. Successful partnership also requires performance management, which is really just a fancy way of saying that both partners should track the outcomes of their partnership against their desired goals and then manage that partnership to continue improving outcomes. So this idea is really just about not becoming complacent with, okay, this is all this partnership can achieve, but looking together at continually optimizing it. And then last but not least, for sure not least, successful partnerships require a healthy balance of power, where one partner's brand doesn't overshadow or overpower the others, and where both organizations put the collective cause really above their individual benefit. So we'll dig into this more with Abby and Christina and how they make sure that there's a strong balance of power, as well as all these other characteristics of successful partnerships in the partnerships that they have built. I hope my audio is better for most of you. I don't seem to be getting comments, so I will take that as a yes unless you let me know otherwise, and thanks for your patience with that. So want to talk for a minute here about my area of passion related to this topic, the role that brand and marketing play in building successful partnerships. So first off, I just want to say that your brand and the way you market your organizations, I believe, might be the most critical asset you have when it comes to building a partnership inside or outside of the nonprofit sector. We've developed this partnership marketing model, that's what you're seeing on your screen here, to illustrate the role that brand plays in really every aspect of building partnerships. So I want to talk you through how we think about this model. So first, we believe that a strong brand and marketing are essential for building awareness among potential partners. So if a partner has never heard of you, it stands to reason that they can't partner with you. Awareness must happen as a prerequisite to a partnership. Second, the quality of your brand is what will attract potential partners to work with you. They want to be affiliated, whether you're looking at other nonprofits as partners, for-profits, academic institutions. They want to be affiliated with organizations that are well-known and well-liked. Seems obvious. Third, the way you show up in the world and the way you bring your brand into collaboration with other organizations is really what builds trust among partners. So if you're a good team player when it comes to the way you talk about and market your organization and partnership, and if you're really committed to putting impact above the interests of your own organization, I think you can really hope to become an organization that others can trust. That word of mouth gets around. And that in turn builds affinity, which means organizations enjoy partnering with you because you lend value to partnerships without exploiting. Ultimately, that results in advocacy, meaning that your partners speak positively about your partnership to others, which in turn generates new partnerships. It's a whole cycle all over again. Take one more minute to reset the audio. It sounds like it might be getting worse again. All right, I'm back and hopefully better. Thanks again for your patience. Not sure what's causing that issue. It was fine when we were in practice. Yeah, ultimately, we want you to see that your brand is helping you build up that advocacy, which in turn generates new partnerships. And truly believe that you need to think about all of these elements and the role that marketing plays, the role that brand plays, if you hope to be successful with partnerships. So Christina and Abby, as I mentioned, are two people who I know feel the same way, and they've both leveraged their organization's brands and marketing to build effective partnerships inside and outside of the sector with organizations like American Express and Microsoft, in Atlas Corps' case, City of Houston and VisionWorks, and Prevent Blindness Texas case. So I cannot wait to jump into this conversation with them, get their thoughts on partnership. So let's transition to the Q&A portion of today's webinar. As a reminder, you can continue to type in questions to the questions box, and we will aim to get to those questions in the last 15 or 20 minutes of the webinar. So Christina and Abby, the stage is over to you. And I'd like to start with just helping our audience understand generally your approach to partnerships at your organization. So beginning with you, can you tell us a little bit about the role that partnerships play at Atlas Corps and give us a few examples of some successful partnerships that you have in place?
Great. So Atlas Corps loves partnerships. It's core to our model and also to our three-part mission. And our three-part mission is to develop leaders, strengthen organizations, and promote innovation to address critical social issues. And just as a reminder, Atlas Corps is a professional fellowship where we bring professionals from around the world to the United States for a year of service at organizations that can be nonprofit, corporate, or government agencies. So with that, we think of partnerships, and it's interesting. I was thinking we have both intra and cross partnerships, as well as we have all the structures. When we look at that, we look at partnerships through what we call a win-win-win, give model. Because for us, there are really three core partners to what we do. And one of them are our hosts or these external partners. So whether that be a nonprofit, whether it be a corporate, whether that be a government agency. And then the other is a fellow. And that's the individual that dedicates a year of service to the US. And then there's Atlas Corps. So when it comes to the give, which we think is so important because we feel like in a partnership, it's important that everyone's investing. So you feel committed to that partnership. So for us, the give is that you have an entity that's opening their organization to hosting this professional for a year. And they're also paying a fee. So we have a host fee that we ask them to contribute to help offset the cost of receiving one of these professionals. And then we have the individual. So you have a professional who's dedicating a year of service away from their home, away from their friends, family, whatever their current job is, here in the US. And they're offering their services as an organization to learn and to share. And then you have Atlas Corps. So as an organization, we're the one implementing the model. So we're doing the recruitment, we're doing the vetting, we're trying to find the placements and the matching, and then we're providing all the support throughout the fellowship and then the ongoing engagement. That's the give. All three parties are investing. And then there's a win-win-win. Because just as everyone is investing, we also believe they should receive a benefit. So the organizations are receiving this amazing professional. It's helping them to achieve their mission. It's helping to enhance their team. And so they're excited to have this individual on their team. And then you have the fellow. So this emerging professional is gaining new experience, building networks, and is getting more exposure in a new country so they can bring that back home, so they can better do what they do back in their home countries. And then there's Atlas Corps. We are achieving our mission that we're enhancing the sector, we're advancing positive social change. And so it's that three-way that comes together. And that's essentially our core model. And then we do have some other ways that we get creative with our partnerships. And just a few examples of how we see that in place is one of them is our partnership with American Express. So we've been a partner with American Express for, I think they just selected their 6th fellow, which we're very excited about. And we started as a grantee with American Express and their focus on leadership development, which aligns very much with our focus on developing emerging leaders from around the world. And then we continued that conversation, and now they actually have a fellow that serves at American Express and is focused on their leadership development, and specifically they have what's called leadership academies that they offer throughout the world where they enhance nonprofit leaders by providing professional development, and they wanted to develop an alumni network. So they engaged an Atlas Corps fellow to lead the implementation of that alumni network. And additionally, since our expertise, one of them is also doing professional development activities, we also do a summit for them. So it's just a great partnership in how it uses our model and also enhances what they're trying to achieve with their mission. In the same way, Microsoft is another great example. They've hosted numerous fellows, and one of their focus areas for their corporate social responsibility is really digital inclusiveness for all. So that they've recruited fellows from different parts of the world and placed them in their corporate offices to help them advance that. And what's amazing is when you have a tech professional from another country, another region, they bring technical expertise, which is beneficial for the Microsoft team, and also local knowledge, which is great to advance that integration locally. So you can actually have someone from on the ground who's worked in the Palestinian territories or who's been in Tunisia who can say, well, this is what that means on the ground. It's almost like translating. So those are two great examples. I'll be talking about them more throughout, but just knowing that partnerships are what we do. And we always value the conversations of looking at how our model can help benefit others that are working in this social sector.
Thanks so much, Abby. So is it fair to say that Atlas Core literally wouldn't exist if it weren't for partnerships?
Yes, I think that is exactly true. So thank you to all our partners out there because you are the reason we are here.
Yes, thank you to all the partners of all the organizations on the line today. Partnerships are such a powerful element of so many of your missions. So Christina, turning over to you, would like you to give us sort of the same general background on the role that partnerships play at Prevent Blindness Texas and some examples of some of your partners.
Absolutely. Prevent Blindness Texas partnerships are really crucial to us executing on our mission and being able to serve the entire state of Texas. And if you were on the webinar earlier when I did my introduction, I mentioned that during our last year, we served almost 37,000 individuals in Texas. You might be surprised to know that we have a staff size of 10 employees. And obviously, we rely on our partners to be able to conduct screening throughout the state of Texas. And so what we do is we recruit individuals, we recruit groups of people. We often have corporations who are looking for opportunities for employee engagement. We have civic organizations, we have faith-based organizations that provide us with individuals, and our program staff actually trains them in a 3-hour training. And at the end of that training, they take an exam. And if they pass the exam, they become certified vision screeners. And this is actually a certification that comes from the state of Texas Department of Health and Human Services. And we are the only organization in Texas that has been approved to actually provide this training. So once you become a certified vision screener, then that enables us to deploy the troops, if you will, to the various locations to help us with actually getting that work done. We maintain the equipment, the actual screening machines and the technology that's needed. And in some cases, just the manipulatives and tools that are needed when we're doing children's screenings. And we then make sure that whatever city or rural area community a screening is scheduled in, if our presence has been requested and it meets all of the standards and requirements that we have for actually entering into a partnership with the organization or the entity, then we will call on our cadre of partners in that area to help us execute that particular screening project. And this is how we get over 50% of the actual screenings completed in any given year. So just to put some context around that, we have about 215,000 students in Houston ISD alone. And Prevent Blindness Texas, on average, completes about 50% of the vision screenings for the students who are enrolled in that school district each year. So obviously, we are relying on a lot of partners to help us get that done. But that is only one of the forms partnerships takes with our organization. We also have partnerships with corporations that are very closely connected to the industry. They have an obvious stake in wanting to improve the current statistics regarding eye and vision issues in the larger conversation regarding overall health and wellness for individuals as well. So some of these larger companies are vendors, perhaps, of eyeglasses or different components of eyeglasses, contact lenses, manufacturers. We also have partnerships with the larger healthcare conglomerates that have the optometry divisions or have ophthalmology divisions within them, the higher education institutions. All of those also are partners of ours that we rely on. We recruit interns from the schools of optometry in the state of Texas. We also recruit individuals who are on the faculty there to help us by serving on boards, serving on committees, helping us from a fundraising perspective. A lot of our major donors, as you would probably imagine, are people who are optometrists or ophthalmologists or work for one of the vendors in the eye health or eye care space on the retail side. But they are able to provide us not only with, the support from a donor perspective, but when we have an event, for example, and we're looking for a place to have packet pickup for our 5K race, we can call on one of our partners as stores throughout Houston, San Antonio, or Austin, or Dallas, and then we can set that up because that then becomes a win-win situation for both of us. It's driving people to their storefront and their place of business, but it's also helping to raise the awareness for what we're doing, and they're supporting us and helping us to have a successful event to ultimately position us to serve more clients. We then have our partnerships that are more on what we consider the public health side, and I'll talk a little bit more about one of those in particular, and that's with the Houston Health Department, which is part of the city of Houston. But we do work with our municipalities and the health departments at the state level, as well as in our major metropolitan areas, which would be Dallas-Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin, Central Texas, El Paso, and then the Valley areas in Texas. We're working with them to actually build up our programming so that we're helping to further the strategic initiatives that they have, while we are also looking at what the goals are for Prevent Blindness at the national level, since we are an affiliate, but also at the local level, we do have a certain amount of autonomy that allows us to direct our strategic path and our initiatives that we lay out every year for our performance measurements and our goals. So our partnerships are varied, but I would say that really we would exist without partnerships, but we would not exist at the level of excellence in which we do, and we definitely would not be able to have the level of impact throughout the community, nor would we be able to serve the numbers of individuals that we are currently serving were it not for our partnerships.
Oh, sorry, everyone. I'm back. I think that should have taken care of the audio issue. That seems to have been the root of it. You didn't lose me for too long there. And thank you, Christina, for the very tail end of what you were saying there. But can everyone hear me okay? Oh, seem to be able to hear you. So thank you again for your patience with issues here. Everyone doing okay there? Still going in and out. I'm so sorry about this. Not sure what's causing these issues today on my end. Get it worked out for next time, hopefully. Okay, I'm going to move us on to our next question here in just a second. Let me take just another moment to try to adjust audio. Okay, does that seem to be better? I hope so. But everything else I can do to try to fix it. Okay, got a couple of yeses. Hopefully it lasts. Fingers crossed. All right, so moving on to our next question here. Abby, I'm sure that many of our attendees are interested in learning more about some of your corporate partnerships. So you spoke a little bit about this in response to the last question, but would love you to go a bit deeper and help us understand how the Atlas Core brand has played a role in helping you build cross-sector partnerships with companies like Microsoft and like American Express, and really how you benefited from your brand in those partnerships.
Yeah, excellent. I'm a firm believer that brand inspires confidence and piques interest. And I think about it when you're going to the doctor. If you go to a doctor's office and it's dirty and unkept, it is not going to inspire your interest to remain and to actually go to that doctor. And I think it's the same way with partnerships amongst organizations. Is that people want to have the confidence and they want to be inspired by your organization. And I think about it, for us, we've been around 12 years, and we, about 5 years ago, went through an internal rebranding process. I mean, we are also a small staff, so it wasn't a big external rebranding. It wasn't like we hired an external company. It was actually one of our alumni. He is a communication specialist from Spain, and he served at Habitat for Humanity in Atlanta. And after he did the fellowship, he was so inspired, and he said, you know what? I love Atlas Corps, but we need to redo this logo. And if you've seen our logo, what it is, it's an upside down world, because our belief is change your perspective, change the world. And that this view of the Atlas as we know it with North America on top or South America is maybe not the correct one. We got to turn it upside down and shift things around. And the original version of that logo, our CEO developed, 10 years ago. I think he did it on Microsoft Word. So it was a little rough. And in fact, people didn't even know it was an upside down world. And so our alumni said, we need to redo this. And so he came up with this new model, and we actually reached out to these stakeholders, and we were asking them, whether it was our fellows and our alumni and our partners at that time, and saying, what do you really think of when you think of Atlas Corps? And it was really beneficial to help us define our language, simplify our logo. And so if you go to atlascorps.org, you'll see our simplified logo that we've been using, and to also really clarify what is the Atlas Corps Fellowship. And internally, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call can relate, is that I'm from the development side. So I'm a grant writer. And so when I write grants, I have to make it clear what we do, how we're going to do it, and what we're going to achieve, and what a funder is funding. And so that is typically 4 to 5 bullet points. When it comes to our programs team, for them, it's so much more. They're looking like, oh, this is what we offer. It's professional development. We have amazing travel stories. We have amazing host organization stories. Yes, that is all amazing. It's also really confusing. And if we present all of that to a potential partner, they're going to get lost in the nuances and the details. So through this branding exercise, we're able to come together and to simplify and to essentially say the Atlas Corps Fellowship are these core components. It's an individual fellow who's from abroad and serves a year in the US. It's 12 months of service at an organization, be it nonprofit, private, or government. It's global leadership development for the fellow, which is 2,000 hours that we provide throughout the 12 months. And then it's engagement in an alumni network. That's the lifelong opportunity for the individuals that participate. And it was, I think, so enlightening and very helpful to be able to express that and share that, so organizations could instantly understand what this meant. And in the same way, we continued that rebranding process throughout many aspects of what we do. And even the simple ways is, how does an organization become a host organization, and creating what we now have is an 8-step process. Or how does an individual become a fellow, which is a 5-step process. And what I think in an organization you might think is more detailed, more complicated, there is always a way to break that down into something simple. And I think that is really what inspires. And I think that is what has helped us achieve these partnerships with entities, such as American Express, or such as Microsoft, or such as your CARES of the world, to say, well, this is exactly what we do. And what it means for you, that if you host a fellow, we're going to ask you to provide a space, a desk, being a member of the team for 12 months. And we're going to ask you to pay a cost share. And then what are we going to do? We're going to do the vetting. We're going to find you applicants. We're going to do the visa. We're going to do all the back end support. And so you don't have to worry about that. Pay the living stipend. So that is what has helped, is really clarify. And so I really encourage people, and I think coming from the nonprofit perspective, like you talk about this branding, and branding can be kind of this nebulous concept or a little overwhelming, and saying, oh, you need like a professional consulting firm. And yes, that is beneficial. And yes, you can also do it internally. And the key is just to think simple and to really break down, how can you express this both visually, as with a logo in a very simple way, and also with the key components of what your organization does. And then that allows you to have those conversations of, how do your core components fit with the core components activity of a potential partner?
Yes, I love that. I really want to underscore what you said about simplifying. I know a lot of the folks on the line today are marketing and communications people, because that's what this series has been focused on historically. I feel that one of the most important roles that marketing and communications can play in an organization is simplifying complexity. You have a lot of people within your organization, right, who are on the front lines doing the work day in and day out, and they talk about things in technical terms, and they should because they understand the work from a technical perspective. But your role, one of your main roles with your brand and what will make it appealing to partners is simplifying that complexity, simplifying the technical into terms that a partner or a layman or outside audience can understand and can resonate with quickly. So yes, snaps to that, Abby. And what about you? How does the Prevent Blindness Texas brand help you build partnerships like the ones you talked about a few moments ago?
I think our brand is something that actually has brought so much value to us, unbeknownst to us. And that might sound like a little bit of a contradiction, but this is what I mean. I've worked in the nonprofit space for almost a decade, and prior to that, worked, in the legal industry, mostly on the public side, sometimes in the government and quasi-government sides. I will say is that one of the things I have noticed is that nonprofit industry professionals and nonprofit organizations tend to have this almost self-deprecating attitude when it comes to things like marketing and branding, and the conversation quickly shifts to those are things that we don't have the luxury of focusing on. That's corporate gibberish. Those kinds of things are often heard in the nonprofit space. And Abby, touched on this just a second ago. The reality is that it doesn't necessarily have to accompany a high price tag, but to set aside time and be intentional as a leadership team or as a core team in the organization, even as the development team. If you don't have dedicated staff, we don't have dedicated staff with a title of anything related to marketing or communications. But I, as the VP of development, have taken this on along with the CEO. But thinking about your brand, one of the things that I know our brand has done for us is it has been able to point to the credibility that we have as an organization. So at the national level, Prevent Blindness started in 1908, so over 100 years ago. And at the local level, Prevent Blindness Texas started in 1965. So, well over 50 years. And longevity definitely says something about the organization, because in the state of Texas, there are over 100,000 nonprofits. And in Houston alone, where we're headquartered, there are over 40,000 nonprofits. And literally every day, it seems like there's someone who has the idea, I think I'll start a nonprofit organization for that. So when you see these nonprofits come and you see them go, and you often see them, unfortunately, have to shutter, and typically it's for the same reasons, there's something to be said about an organization that can last for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years or more. So that credibility, that longevity definitely speaks for itself, because when anyone is looking at a partnership, be it on a professional level, or all we have to do is think about it on a personal level, we definitely want to do our homework and do some vetting and make sure that we're not aligning with an entity, an individual, a partner that could put us in a situation to impact us negatively ultimately. Also, I think, and just thinking about Prevent Blindness Texas, our strong leadership as part of our brand has really helped us to bring several new partnerships on board within the last 2 years. Our CEO has been here for 2 years, and she is one who definitely understands the importance of dedicating time and resources to thinking about marketing, but even the deeper conversation of thinking about our brand and what is our brand. Sometimes we don't even know where to start with that conversation because we don't think about it, especially when you're in an organization focused on direct service, such as Prevent Blindness Texas. We're trying to meet the needs of, and you have to at some point have someone in the organization who says, we've got to stop. Hey, kids, everybody out of the swimming pool. Let's have this conversation about branding. And one of the things that I think is really key is your brand is not just your logo. Yes, that's a part of it. But I think people tend to default to thinking that brand and logo are one and the same. And that's only a part of it. And if you don't know what your brand is, I would suggest that a good place to start is to ask people that are engaged with you what they associate with your organization. You know, give them some characteristics, come up with a list of words. You know, it could be a word wall activity that you engage in as a team, and send that out to your donors, send that out to people that you regularly engage with, to people who may not be familiar with you, if you're not sure if they know who you are or not. And it would be really interesting to see what are the things that they associate with you, or what do they think of. And that will help drive those internal conversations in terms of what is our brand and what do we want it to be and how do we get there. So I think in terms of credibility, longevity, and also just, you know, setting us apart when we're in a field with so much competition, our brand has been able to do that for us for sure.
Yeah, so wonderful. And it's a great situation to have a CEO or an executive leader who really champions brand and understands that it's important, even if you don't have a full-fledged marketing and communications function, just to be able to see brand as something that's interwoven into everything that you do, not least of which is work.
Absolutely.
Okay, so moving on here, you've both been hugely successful in building prominent corporate partnerships, and I'm guessing that you've picked up some insight along the way about what partners like yours want from the nonprofits that they collaborate with. So, Abby, beginning with you, what do you think corporate partners look for when choosing the nonprofits that they partner with?
Yeah, that is the never-ending question, and I will answer it by saying 2 questions that everyone should ask themselves when approaching a potential partner is 1, what is the benefit to them? And 2, what do you have to offer them? I imagine that from your organization perspective, you have already answered those 2 questions. You know what you want potentially from that corporate partner. You know what the benefit's going to be. But have you asked yourselves what the benefit is to them, what you have to offer them? It goes back to that give, win, win, win. Because when you translate it and put the shoe on the other foot, look at it from the different perspective, it's going to help you have a more informed conversations because you are thinking about what is of interest to them. And I think it's valuable to just analyze, take a look at your organization, and you have a lot to offer, and you start thinking about what is it we have that you have to offer. Some of the areas that I think maybe go under-recognized in nonprofits and can actually be appealing to some corporate partners is looking at your reach. So what is your social media network? What is your newsletter outreach? Are there opportunities that you could promote this partnership, that you can help them reach their target market? What is the target market of that corporation? And is that also a target market that you're engaging with? Or geography. Are you operating, are your services being provided in the same cities that that corporation is also interested in? What about areas of expertise? Are there activities that your organization is doing that maybe they're looking for? Do you have a job training program? And they're actually looking for entry-level employees. So, oh, wait, is there a connect there? So I think that's what's so important, and that's what we've really spent a lot of time doing is how do we make those connections? And I will admit, like I've often fallen in that trap where I'm thinking, this is what we want, this is what's going to help us. And I have to stop and say, it's not about me. It's not about Atlas Corps. It is about how we can benefit others. And, you know, that's our consistent message when we're talking to entities about hosting a fellow. It's like, this is what this individual can bring to your organization and what they can achieve. And here are stories of what fellows have done. And the same with these advanced partnerships. And like American Express, I know I talk about American Express a lot, but it's just been such a long time partner and such a diverse partner for us. I just think back to when I think it was my second year in the organization, and we drafted our first grant application, and we did that. We said, what's our social media? outreach, what are our demographics of people like on our newsletter? Okay, we really had probably in the 20s, 30s, and 40s were people who were interested in Atlas Core. We were only about, I think at that point, 3 years old. And we looked at the geography. And we said, okay, when looking at our social media subscribers, newsletter subscribers, as well as the countries of origin of our fellows, how do they align with where American Express corporate is operating? And that's what we talked about and what we presented, so we could show that there's alignment, there's interest, there's something that we can also bring to the table. So I think it's really important. Look at your assets. So as an organization, do a little asset evaluation, and that is not just about asking. You are offering the opportunity to partner with you, and present it that way, because it is an opportunity, and that a corporation would be lucky to be part of that.
Yes. Oh, I love it. And on the flip side of that, you've touched on this a little bit, Abby, but Christina, I'll turn this one over to you. On the flip side of that question, what do you look for at your organization in corporate partners as you're thinking about who you might work with and targeting the right types of corporate partners?
So there are a few for in corporate partners, but I would say probably the most important one is that we look for someone who has a shared vision. If we have a great corporation with lots of opportunity for multiple points of engagement, they're doing really well from a revenue perspective, so they could become a major donor for several years for us, and all of those pieces look great. If that corporation does not align with our core values at Prevent Blindness Texas, that is not a partnership that we will continue to pursue. And I think as nonprofits, we sometimes have to resist the temptation to think that all money is good money. We want to be very protective of our brand, in the sense of equity is hugely important to us at Prevent Blindness Texas, as well as Prevent Blindness. But equity and true inclusion and access for all of those are very core to how we do our work and who we are and who we serve. So when we don't see that reflected in a potential corporate partner, that is a partnership that we will pass up. If we don't see that it is a partnership where the corporation is interested in truly giving us an equal voice in the partnership, we will pass the partnership up. We want it to be a partnership. We don't want it to be they are driving the vehicle and we're sitting in the back seat riding, because that's not a partnership, because then the car is going to go wherever they want it to go. We want to be in the back seat together and letting the Uber or the Lyft driver take us where we want to go while we're having the conversation about what it looks like on the way. So we look for those kinds of things. And we also look for corporations who can fill in a gap, if you will. So because one of the things that is so unique about working in this eye health and vision care space, we intersect with so many different industries. We often have to make the connection for the corporation, but we look for what's an area that we haven't necessarily tapped into, so that we can focus more on having a broad reach versus having multiple corporate partners that all come from the same industry. And that's important for us, because where we're going as we're doing our strategic planning for the next 3 years, we definitely want to make sure that we are broadening our reach to help position eye health and vision care to be more central to the overall conversation about health and wellness in the state of Texas.
Yes, thanks for that. I know that this is probably a good reminder for a lot of you. I think it can be so hard to walk away from a partnership opportunity when you can see that immediate financial benefit, but you really have to have your eye on the long game. And when the partner or potential partner is misaligned from a values perspective or on something especially as important as equity and inclusion, absolutely walking away is the long-term decision to make. So thanks for sharing that, Christina, really appreciate it. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here to make sure that we have time for audience questions and turn back over to you, Abby. We've talked about how partnership is really baked into the Atlas Core model since you focus on fellowships and fellows are placed in your host organizations. You've given us some examples of that at American Express, at Microsoft. But I'm guessing that not all of these host organizations partner with Atlas Core in deeper ways beyond just the fellowship. So tell us a little bit more for organizations that might have similar models or be inspired by this about how you determine which of those partners you should kind of extend beyond that typical host company role and build deeper partnerships with. And tell us, does brand play a role in that decision?
Yes, brand plays a role just as the same as I think another entity looking at us and looking at that confidence and piquing their interest. Atlas Core also is looking at entities and we're seeing, oh, are they going to be a good fit? Do they seem like the type of organization that we want to partner on a deeper level? I think it's also about dreaming big and having the courage and the comfort level to have those conversations. And that comes with time. So when you first start a partnership, and as I mentioned, our core is this 12-month fellowship, and that's often how we initiate the conversation. And then it's from that, depending on how that conversation goes or how that fellow placement goes, to look at, are there other opportunities to collaborate? And like I even see that in some of our conference opportunities. There's numerous organizations that we partner with that host annual conferences, whether that's CARE, whether that's the UN Foundation, or whether that's independent sector. And it's looking at, is there a way to then benefit that activity? And so it's not developing something new, like we need to create a whole new partnership between the two of us. It's looking at, oh, this is a core activity for you every year. Can our fellows benefit that? What we do, just like we do in our 12-month fellowship, we're going to bring diversity of perspective because these are professionals from all around the world. They're also going to bring great communication, like they can help spread the knowledge about that conference in a multilingual format on social media to their networks in their home countries. And so that's like just like a very simple example of how we're taking something that's already existing and based on a strong relationship between us and a partner, we start branching out and seeing if there's other opportunities for what we do in our model to enhance what they're doing. And I think that's the key. And just doing your homework and looking at and being very familiar with what that other partner is doing and to see how it can relate and then bringing that up. And I do encourage people, like I mentioned, to do that homework and to also build up that, like the collateral or the relationship. And it's not typically a conversation you have immediately, but it's over time, and look at what have been your touch points. And so just naturally within our fellowship, we built in touch points throughout the year. We do check-ins. We're communicating with our host on a regular basis. So we do have that relationship built up, and look at that and how you're doing with your partners and ones that you think you can enhance that partnership. Because what makes it easier is when you have that comfort in the relationship and in the conversation that you can bring up new ideas, even if the ideas seem crazy. And what makes it more challenging is if you don't have that kind of relationship and they're not just comfortable having kind of a back of the napkin conversation. So it's all about I think the long term and how about the holistic approach to those conversations.
Yeah, that's so great. And my favorite thing from that whole list of great suggestions for our audience was the idea about dreaming big and thinking that you can achieve things with partners that maybe seem too big for your organization. They're too big of names. Why would they want to partner with us? You may be surprised. I've seen a lot of cases where a partnership can kind of be the tipping point for a smaller organization.
Exactly.
The story is inspiring from that perspective. Okay. And I'm skipping us ahead here to our final question just to make sure that we have time for the audience again. So Christina, we'll start with you here. What's the number one piece of advice that you would give? With everything that's been said today, I know you've given a lot already, but the number one piece that you would give to another organization that wanted to strengthen its brand and marketing in order to build more impactful partnerships?
The number one piece I would share would be you've got to set time aside and be intentional about determining what your brand is, and what you want it to be. And when you do that, you will be able to use that to drive the strategy for pursuing partnerships and for even looking at the current partnerships that you have and making them more impactful and more meaningful. But setting aside the time to really dig deep, look inward, also getting outward feedback, outward facing feedback, but look inward as an organization and think about what our brand is and is this what we want it to be? And if not, then let's think about what we need to make our brand be what we want it to be. And then that will be your roadmap for pursuing those partnerships. And I guarantee you that once you keep that as your framework, that you will start to see the partnerships increase and you'll start to see the partnerships become more impactful and more meaningful.
Yes, and Prevent Blindness Texas is a great example of that for anyone who wonders if it can be done. So is Atlas Core, of course. So what about you, Abby? What's your number one piece of advice that you hope attendees will walk away from today with?
Simplify. Simplify the description of what you do, how you do it, and what you have to offer, and then accompany it with metrics. And it may seem daunting. A recommendation I have is many people in our communities have access to higher education. So it is a great marketing communications project that they could potentially analyze and as an external audience, help you to simplify into a few bullet points into a key phrase, what you do, what you offer, and put that numerical value. Or even if you don't have higher education in your community, what about a high school class of like communications? It could be a great project, and having that external view, so they help just to simplify your language. Simplification is key to be able to have those conversations.
I totally agree. And even if you think you don't need to simplify, ask around, get an outside perspective.
Yes.
You need to not realize it. That's part of it. in these organizations, right? Is we just can't see the complexity that we're creating always. So I echo that entirely. All right, well, very good. I've been seeing some audience questions come in, and I want to make sure we have time to get to at least a few of them. So our first question comes from Gabrielle, and she asks, how do you use your website or other online marketing to thank current partners or future partnership opportunities? So Abby, why don't we stay with you here first for that question?
So just to repeat, so how do we use our website to further those opportunities?
Or feature or further them?
Great question, and I think it is one that we are continually working to try to figure out. One of the key ways is that we actually have on our website, we have a partners page, which features all our partners, and there's actually a search function on that page that helps to people to look at what cities they're in, also related to social issues they're involved in, and we often send that to people. So it builds confidence when an organization who has little familiarity with Atlas Core is like, well, who are your partners? And we've had more than 250 different partners of all sizes and in numerous locations. So that is very helpful to us. And in addition, what we started doing is once a month, we have our host organization spotlight of the month. We post it on our blog, we put it in our newsletter, and everyone loves it. Is thrilling when someone reaches out and says, we want to feature you this month. And our host organizations love it too. So it's fun to be able to share their story, and also a great marketing piece for us. And then we're also cross-posting it on social media. So I think those are two great areas, is to be able to display who our partners are, and then to be able to offer personal stories once a month on those partnerships.
Yes, storytelling is so key. I think all the logos in the world won't do as much as a couple of strong stories. All right, thanks, Abby. And Christina, this question is for you, and this comes from Kelly. And Kelly asks, for Prevent Blindness, what are those partnership benefits that you ask for outside of funding? I think she's going back to when we talked about what you look for in partners.
So it really depends on the partnership because we have so many different forms, but I'll give just two very brief examples. So one of the partnerships that I'm thinking of is one that seems like an unlikely partnership, and it is with a very prominent car dealership. And initially, a lot of people say, well, what in the world do they have to do with, eye health and vision problems? Well, there are several connections. From a safety perspective, a large number of auto accidents are caused because of people who have not had their vision checked as regularly as they should. They have outdated prescriptions. On the other side, like from an employee perspective, employees who are working at this dealership in their maintenance department who are doing work need to be sure that they are doing all the things they can to protect their eyes, as part of the safety initiatives for the company. There's several connections there, and that's why I mentioned earlier, sometimes you have to help connection with the potential partner. But aside from funding, aside from, allowing us to have an event, at the dealership, one of the things that they do is they have actually offered for us to come on site while customers are waiting to get their car serviced. And we will set up, we'll do complimentary vision screenings. And while this is not necessarily an audience that would most likely be low income individuals, this is an audience of people who now have knowledge. And so they take that knowledge. A lot of them have engaged with us as volunteers. Some of them have become donors as well, but this is a way where we are basically increasing the number of ambassadors that we have for us in the community so that people begin to recognize us and know who we are when they see us. That's a little bit of, a creative way of approaching that, but we have a captive audience. We're able to provide a service that even people who can afford to go and get a comprehensive eye exam may not have realized that it's time for them to go and get one until they go through our preliminary exam and there's a problem. We've been able to help people discover larger, much more serious health issues in that way. And so at the end of the day, when we talk about overall health and wellness, we want to position vision health in that conversation because it is the identifier and the gateway for discovering so many other health issues. So ultimately, that's helping us further our mission from an education and an advocacy perspective as well. But that's also part of the partnership that we have with this car dealership.
That's such a great example of seemingly a misaligned partnership that actually is very aligned when you think about it strategically and can go a lot deeper than maybe a lot of people would have realized. So hopefully that's inspiring to some of you on the line and really, really appreciate it, both Christina and Abby. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. This is all we have time for today, unfortunately. So thank you all for your patience with my audio issues. We'll try to get this resolved for next time. Would like to share just a few ways to go deeper with this material if you're so inclined. If you were on our last two webinars, you know that we now have a closed Facebook group, private Facebook group, where we can continue these conversations. It's called the Nonprofit Marketing Collaborative. You will find the link to that here on your screen as well as in the chat box that popped up when you joined the webinar. Would love to have you request to join us there. We'll approve you quickly and can continue taking more questions over there. You also may have heard on a marketing workshop fast approaching September 13th, all-day marketing planning workshop. In the 24 hours following each of our webinars up through this workshop, we're offering $100 off of the workshop fee. So you can see the code for that here on your screen and the link within the chat box. Would love to have you join us there. Workshop fee includes breakfast and lunch and a post happy hour celebration, as well as complimentary copies of the Essential Nonprofit Marketing Plan template that some of you may remember from past webinars. And then last but certainly not least, excited to continue to have discussions like these with others in the sector. We have not just one, but two webinars coming up in September. The first is on September 4th. We will be discussing fundraising success with Noreen Castor, who I know is on the line as an attendee today. Noreen. She's the former Associate Development Director at the Robert R. McCormick Foundation and former Development Officer at Lurie Children's Hospital, partner to nonprofits in their development and capacity building efforts. And we'll be discussing what you need to do between September 4th and the end of the year to make your end of your fundraising campaign a success. Top of mind topic for many of you, I know. And then on September 18th, we'll be joined by Dory McCorder, CEO of YWCA of Metropolitan Chicago, to discuss the important question, can nonprofit marketing and communications advance equity? And that'll be in alignment with commitment number 9 from our manifesto. So you can register for all our webinars at prosper-strategies.com/webinars, and hope to see you on those next 2 webinars in September. In the meantime, I hope you will all continue building toward your marketing revolution as always, and let me know if we can be of any help. Thank you again so much, Christina and Abby. Really enjoyed talking with you today, and thank you to everyone else on the line for being here. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.